Hey, Tanya.
Hey Nelly,
How are you?
I'm well, and you?
So good. So, thank you for joining me in this
Oh,
space.
you're most welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
So cool. Beautiful. Let's kick it off with when I chatted around what's the intent of this piece first up, and obviously, really important. So, the intent we discussed was that it is to introduce your community to German New Medicine for those who haven't come across it yet, and to introduce my community to the Demartini method for those who haven't come across it yet. And as a wrap up, to share how those two things can be brought together so beautifully and so powerfully. This is the bit that I get really excited about. How people can use this in collaboration. So that's our intention for this piece, guys. And Tanya, do you want to kick it off? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, how you found Demartini, and let's get it going.
Okay, so Tanya, got that one down pat. So I'm a counselor and leadership coach. So I've been helping business owners to essentially level up in business, in particular with their income, influence and impact they have on the world. And so I've been doing private and group coaching for, well, I'm in my 12th year this year. So time's just flown. So I've always been really curious about people. It's just maybe because partly I've come from this like really socially awkward human being. And even though I do a lot of speaking, and it might not seem like that in this moment, but I am at times. And so I've been fascinated by people. And so counseling just seemed like a natural progression for me to go and learn about human behavior and human dynamics. And then also to understand like how could I help people to maximize their performance, but also maximize their potential as well. And so it's been really fascinating. And so, it's interesting that when you are a student and you're really eager to go and learn something and a new learning coming to you, you just attract the perfect teacher at the perfect time. And that's what happened for me. I was with a group of friends and I'd met this lady, and she was this American lady, and she's like, Tanya, you have to go and do the breakthrough experience with Dr. Demartini. And she was like so certain for me to get there. I flew interstate. I went and attended his 2-day weekend program, and it did change my life because I learned more about psychology in 24 hours with him than I did in my three-year degree. So what was also really interesting was that out of 210 people in the room, they selected one individual who was going through grief as part of what the process that he teaches, and who was experiencing grief, to go up with him on stage and to a process with him to clear that grief. And I was fortunate enough and so blessed to be selected. So I had an opportunity to be up on stage with Dr. Demartini in his weekend program. And for me, studying counseling, realizing that grief, the standard resolution for grief is between 2 and 5 years on average. And I was 3 months in. So I thought I had a long road ahead of me to be able to come to a greater sense of healing and feeling complete in that particular area of what happened. But in an hour and 20 minutes, I went from a blubbering mess to my head feeling like jelly when if you've experienced grief and someone who's close to you dying, that going from that to having so much certainty and having gratitude and love for the passing of my boyfriend, is what I wanted to master, and this methodology is what I wanted to share with people. So 12 years later and many thousands of hours of consulting, and I'm still just as inspired as I was back on the first day.
Amazing. And such a powerful start to that journey. Like, it wasn't just a subtle little let's go.
Oh,
that was a here.
Yeah, that was like a kick up the butt, like to get me. I had to have something really challenging happen to get my butt to go and do some self-development work. In the back of my mind, I wanted to do the journey, but I was just maybe too scared or not ready to level up, and there was a lot of fears behind it. But you just sometimes have to have a little side swipe in life or challenge to push you to grow.
Amazing. We're so glad you did. It's brought us to where we are today.
Thank you.
And so for the newbie, I guess, or for someone who's new to Demartini, how would you explain what it is exactly, and why would you say it's so valuable to learn? Why should we be here learning and listening today?
So the Demartini method is powerful. It's effective and efficient because it's a methodology that it's repeatable and it's based on science. So essentially it's a series of systematic questions that you ask yourself to dissolve your perceptions around your emotional triggers and emotional barriers or buttons that you have that are creating how you feel. So for example, if you feel angry, that's because of an unrealistic expectation that you have on how the world should be. It's like, the phone's not working, so you throw it, or your car doesn't start, so you kick it. And so we just have these like physiological reactions in our body, and anger is one of them. And when we understand then it's part of our perception that's actually creating the feeling, then we also know that if we shift our perception, it will change how we feel in our physical body. So essentially it's, Dr. Demartini has named it as the tool for 1,000 uses. So essentially people have been able to utilize the methodology from perceptions of trauma, childhood challenges like learning difficulties, from relationship breakdowns to losses of jobs, money, health, to not being able to fall pregnant, not wanting to know, they don't know what their purpose is. So like having an existential crisis, like there's a whole range of reasons why people would come to use the method in the first place. But why would you want to know it? I mean, essentially our emotions, we can sometimes feel like our emotions are ruling us and running us. And sometimes we don't feel like we have control over them. And so because of that, we can then build up these like experiences that we go through in life, challenges, and build up these triggers inside of ourselves. And then when someone says boo, you break down and fall and cry and fall apart because you've just got all this unresolved stuff. Or you get more angry than you realize. You get really angry whenever you're a child, and you're like, why am I so angry? And it's because you had stuff happen at work that's been unresolved and you've brought home, and then anger has gone out towards your children. And so being able to then resolve the emotions and the charged emotions we have can create more like stability, more wellness, more open-heartedness and depth in our relationships as a result.
And more health, like we're going to speak about this evening.
Definitely more health. There's definitely more health as a result.
Yeah, super cool. And going back to the 1,000 uses as well, I'm pretty sure I recall seeing somewhere you actually posted a list of 1,000 uses of
I did.
Demartini in one of the groups. Yeah.
Yeah. So
did you write that yourself?
I did. So
good.
Yeah. So I actually just went through. I mean, it's not a there's more out. There's more uses out there, but I just went through the 7 areas of life, which is your spiritual life, your mental, financial, family, social, physical, and mental. So it went through all the different areas of life and looked at the common problems that I found that I've worked with clients in, and ones that I haven't worked in that I'd be really curious to work in. And so I just found a lot of the challenges that people might face, and how the Demartini method would be a tool that you could use for clearing that particular issue. So yes, it can, from anything from like your car breaking down, a leg being broken, to nail biting, to there's a whole heap of financial crises. Like it can be used for a lot of different things.
Yeah. And was it something on that list per chance that you would call your convincer of Demartini, or was it something else? What was your moment of going, okay, this is for real?
Yeah. So there's a quote, which is, I've forgotten who said it, but it's something like, for those who believe, no proof is necessarily, and for those who don't believe, no proof is possible. And so I know it's like, for me, the first time Dr. Demartini took me through the process himself with me one-on-one, I had gone from like feeling grief in my body to feeling heavy, to feeling like I didn't even want to live. Like I was like, well, what's the point in life if I can have something that I love taken away? And unfairly and unjust and young, So I thought, that wasn't possible to change that perception. So after such a short period of time, and then feeling in my body this physiological change, like I felt my heart open and I felt love for the very first time in my entire life. Like I felt a warmth run through my body. I had tears in my eyes, and I had what felt like a deep level of healing that I hadn't had before in my life. And then even when I thought, months later, I thought about my boyfriend and him dying, I just had love for him and love for his experience. I felt like his death created and helped me give my life back again. And so Dr. Demartini didn't need to come and convince me that this process works. He didn't need to come and give me all these reasons why, the science behind it of why it works, because I felt it in my body, which I just knew it. Like I was a believer because I experienced it. I had goosebumps from head to toe. Like I just knew it. So I felt like there wasn't anything that he needed to do or say to convince me. And I just knew that. Why it's just like, I don't know whatever you might call it, like at a soul level or just at a deep level. That's why I just knew I wanted to learn more from him and learn more about what he had to offer. But I couldn't have given you like a lot of reasons why. It just felt like there was certainty in what he had to share, and I wanted to know more.
Yeah, 100%. I resonate with that. It was very similar to my experience. We'll come to it in a minute about learning about TNM, but it's that cellular knowing of a truth for you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And just to throw a bit of a random question at you, actually, in that process of resolving that grief, did you happen to notice any physiological or physical symptom resolutions?
So what if I go back to that the first time
that time and space? Yeah,
I can tell you what other people had commented on. So when I first came into the work, into this work, you might have described me as a hippie. So I mean, I've still got long hair, so still, but I was definitely a free loving hippie, in terms of that day I had like a really long dress on. I was really into I still am to health and wellness, but I would wear Vibrams, which are the toe shoes, because shoes I perceive not very good for you. So I would wear these shoes. So I'm up on stage with these shoes. I'm like, I don't care about fashion. So I'm like, but I had my hair covering my face. So over my board, hunched shoulders looking down. And so over the time, what happened was I could feel myself and my physical body opening up, I could feel an expansion and a change, and I could see that I could start looking up and being eye to eye with people instead of just, feeling down and depressed. So people had come up afterwards and said, Tanya, you look so different compared to who you looked like when you walked in the door yesterday versus now. You just have a glow about you. So, something's changed, and just that you could just tell, because people hold a lot of emotion in their body, in their face particularly. You see someone who comes and releases a lot of emotion, they look like 10 years younger. And so people were just commenting on that physiological change. I also felt it as well, but it was definitely a feedback from the outer world as well about the change.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the picture that you've just described that walked in to that room, that stage.
Yeah.
Crazy. And so staying on that topic then, what have you noticed in other people, working with other people, in terms of physiological or perhaps symptomatic changes?
Profound. So I've seen someone who had MS walk, when they first came before they did the work, limping to after doing the work. But that was months of doing the work. So I'm not saying it's just, an hour and they're free of their symptoms, but there was a lot of work behind that to be able to live a normal life and not have symptoms, or have symptoms flare up when they're under stress. and they have to manage their stress. So that's still but remarkable. So I've seen couples resolve emotion between the two of them to be able to fall pregnant. I've seen I had one guy who had pretty like blood nail biting, like pretty prolific nail biting, to completely stopping that altogether. I've seen an athlete who was major injury be able to say, I wanted to get out of the sport, didn't want to be in it anymore, and actually that was their excuse not to play because they wanted out. I've seen someone break their, I haven't seen someone break their back, but I've worked with someone who's broken their back in a training exercise, and something similar as well, kind of like was that real life-changing turning point for them to actually go and do a career that was actually more fulfilling for them anyway. They didn't, because the other one would be more life and death for them. So it was like an unconscious strategy there. I've seen someone who I've worked with someone who had stage 4 cancer, and them to just love their life and be okay to die. And so that was like really like I felt privileged to be able to work with someone at that point in their life, but also to help them to come to a point of like loving their experience. To the individual who referred said that at the funeral, the husband said that he was incredibly grateful for the one session that I was able to show, because she was saying, I just had such ill health for the last 4 years. And I was like, well, where do you have health, and where do you have health? And that's what we focused on for a full hour, is asking her where she had health, to a point that she was in tears going, I have so much health, So yeah. So that was to be able to have that gift to give her before she passes, to know that, she's got some completion and she's not dying in such a, ill health way, was pretty profound. So, I mean, I could go on. I've someone who like hair pulled. I'm not even going to pronounce the terminology, because that's like, yeah. But hair pulling, and due to a really what was a really horrific car accident where one of their parents had died, and we cleared the event. She was, for the first time, grateful for that whole experience that happened, where she was in the car and trapped and not being able to help anyone and not be able to move and hear the noise. And she was completely grateful for that experience. To within 4 sessions, she's dramatically reduced the hair pulling, or the compulsion to feel like she needs to do it anymore. So we've still got work to do, and we're still working on it, but it's definitely made some massive changes. So it's inspiring to be able to give people their life back again, or get them to see their experience from a new perspective.
Yeah, 100%. So inspirational. And how do you believe that the Demartini is like working on those symptoms? Like, what does your gut feel say, and your knowledge say, about why it's creating such powerful shifts on a physical symptom level?
Okay, so I mean, so essentially emotions weigh us down, and so they're influencing us physiology, because we know that, like, I mean, neurologists have studied this in terms of being able to, when you're angry, blood rushes to your hands because we want to fight. We also, if we get panicked, we can also get blood rushing to our feet because we need more blood rushing in our extremities, so then we can run away. And so when we feel, elated, we smile and we laugh, we get these different changes so emotions are constantly changing our physiology. And so essentially at a cellular level, what's also happening is anytime we go into like stress mode, the cell walls also go up into defense. And so then we also have at a cellular level, like certain things or certain perceptions are turning on and turning off different cells inside of our body and making them work differently, which is then also influencing our physiology as well. We also know that there's a direct correlation between the rhythm of our breath and our psychology as well. So, as the breath wanders, so does the mind, and as the mind wanders, so does the breath. Oh. So if you're an individual who does a lot of like I notice that inside of my client sessions, if I'm working with them on the phone or if I'm in a Zoom session and they do a big sigh, and I'm like, that's either deflation of like, you know, or depressed in that moment, because that's a long exhalation, short inhalation. So that's showing where the mind, what the state of the mind is in that moment. The inverse is when we get excited and we hyperventilate because we're like, you know, because we're so excited, and then you can't breathe properly because it's like long, it's like short, it's like longer inhalations but less exhalation because you're not letting out. So essentially our breath is also giving us an indication of how we're, you know, what's happening inside of our body. So essentially then as we change our perceptions, you know, if we're stressed about something, for example, and our breathing has changed, and our cells are shifting, as we change our perception, how we view the world, our lens on the world, then our physiology is going to follow, because we can know that as we find benefits of something that happened, with our anxiety or lopsided perceptions or anger start to decrease, and then we start to have a normal 1-to-1 ratio of breathing. We start to feel calmer, and our cells start to operate differently. So there's definitely an impact that happens as we change our perceptions. Because I know that I could make you, Nellie, like you've got a little banjo, like I know I could make you super stressed about him, and we could spend, you know, some time just talking about all the shit things about parenting, like, and being a mom, and, you know, and we just stack up all the things, and then we could make it weight really heavy to a point you're just like, oh my God, I'm super stressed about this. Or we could find something you're stressed about, find the blessings in it. What are you learning? What are you growing? How are you growing? What's the benefit from it? How is it serving you? And you can feel lighter. So I could take you from stress to light to stress to light, depending on what question we're asking. So essentially, as we shift our perceptions, our physiology is also going to shift as well.
So good to hear it from that perspective. There's just so much resonance in the language and terminology and things, even between German New Medicine and Demartini, all in there. And so knowing just the little snippets that we've discussed about German New Medicine, how can you see that start to weave in? Like, where does that start to make sense with you? Because I feel like this is a real lead-in question, right? To understanding, you've spoken about perception change, which is the big, massive key in German New Medicine. So what's, just from the little bits we've spoken about, what strikes you as?
I thought it was super interesting. So, we've had a conversation about German New Medicine. What I found really interesting was that you know, in terms of the healing component of illness, that one, it's a perception that's created it, but also the fact that the illness itself is the sign that it's healing. That to me, like, blew my mind, and I was like, oh my God, that's like a whole new paradigm, which is essentially what the Demartini method is as well. And this philosophy of thinking is like creating this new paradigm of how we view the world. And then I love that German New Medicine is also a new paradigm of how we view our bodies and our ailments and our, you know, illnesses that we have inside of our body. I love that it's like creating a new paradigm of thinking around that.
Yeah. Super cool. I said so many tie-ins, and that perception key is the really, really big one that binds the two, I think, and connects the two. So do you feel ready? Shall we move into speaking about German New Medicine at this point? Or is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I would love to know. So tell me, like, how did you, so who are you? Who are you? I mean, just such a, like, you know, really difficult question. Like, who are you? And what do you do? And how did you come across German New Medicine?
I'll come back in an hour with the answer to that. But the short and sweet one would be, I'm Nellie. And German New Medicine is so different to your experience, right? Mine was that subtle little seed in the conversation. Whereas yours was like that drop in. So we moved to Western Australia, and I knew my body wasn't working properly. And I went to see one of my partner's friends, who was a kinesiologist. He did a session on me. We got speaking about fasting. That's how that component of my business started, and my experience, my journey. And he also just dropped this little seed, this German New Medicine. Have you heard about it? And I was like, no, what's that? And he gave me this tiny little spiel. And for me, it was like, I describe it like coming home. It's like similar to what you experienced. My body just went, oh, I know this as a truth at a cellular level. Like this is putting a language to everything that I've intuitively known and felt for my entire life. And I've just come home and someone's explained it for me. So I delved into this massive exploration of it, self-exploration, because there wasn't very much training available in Australia at the time. I had to learn through European routes and ended up studying with lots of people across the world. And that sort of, you know, that has led me to a massive part of who I am today. So this is now basically the paradigm that we live life by. It's created incredible medical freedom and sovereignty for us. And so it's been a massive part of my business, Nellie Be Well, where I work with people to resolve their physical and mental health symptoms. And like, you know, there are lots of things that I am, but I believe I am my business as well. I love this work so much, so deeply, that really that is a part of who I am now. So I do believe in medical freedom, in medical sovereignty, in people being able to shake and shift and change and heal their own lives without having to rely on any external forces. So that's something I'm super passionate about, and how I came to learn about German New Medicine. And that was 2016. So here we are, was that nearly 7 years ago? I think it was at the beginning of 2016. So yeah, that's been just this amazing journey forward from there.
So that's beautiful, because I love our intuition of how much it like leads us. It knows so much more than we give it credit for. It's about following, it's like following that. And then what's also really interesting is that what I also love about the Demartini method is it's this inward journey. You know, it's you just have a series of questions that you're asking, but then you're the one finding the answer within you. It's not like an external thing that you need to do on the outside and someone needs to, you know, tell you something. It's like, hang on, what's your wisdom inside of you? Because it is far greater than any wisdom that you'll find on the outside.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
So tell me, then give me like a deeper explanation about what it is, like German New Medicine, and then why would we want to know about it?
Yeah. So I would call German New Medicine, we shy away from calling it a modality. We prefer to call it something like a roadmap or a guidebook, because it's not actually something that we use. It's something that just kind of is. It's a completely different way of viewing the body, of biology, disease, the mind, all of these things, right? So it's based on what we call the five biological laws of nature, and encompasses that we are nature ourselves as well. So the first biological law is what we call the iron rule of cancer. And this is where we see that every disease and symptom known to us today, with the exception of poisonings and accidents, is initiated by a conflict shock. It's initiated by an event, a trauma event, something that catches us off guard. And at that time, it simultaneously impacts the psyche, the brain, and the corresponding organ in the body. Now, the purpose of that is actually, and this is kind of what you touched on before, is that so it's not a mistake, it's not random, right? This biological program is actually there to help us survive and make it through the perceived traumatic event. Yeah, so it's working on our behalf. The body's working for us, not against us. So that's the iron rule of cancer. Yeah, important to note, it impacts those three levels simultaneously. So it's the psyche that perceives the event. So the nature of the event and the way in which the individual perceives it determines what organ is going to be turned on in this biological program. So that lands on the brain, and in the brain, the part of the brain corresponds to the organ that's necessary to help the individual through that program. So that's probably the shortest, sweetest little explanation of German New Medicine I can give. It's highly based, like really scientifically based, true observational science, based in embryology and microbiology and all sorts of things. So it does have a really solid, scientific base. A lot of people are like, oh, it's metaphysics. And I'm like, no, it's not metaphysics. It's, biology.
It's interesting because when we spoke, you were telling me about the doctor that had I guess created, I don't know if you call it created, but
Yeah.
had studied or had like looked at all his patients who had cancer, because he was a oncologist, and he had looked at his patients and just looked at what are the perceptions they have around that particular and why that particular illness or cancer was created. And so
Yeah.
that was definitely fascinating.
Yeah, correct. So that's Dr. Harmer, who discovered and documented the germ in your medicine. And yeah, he was a cancer specialist, head internist, and he so how it came about for him was basically his son was accidentally shot in the head and killed, and it took some months for his son to die. But when he eventually passed, shortly after, Dr. Harmer developed testicular cancer. And he had this series of, again, intuition and dreams and premonitions and all these things of his son going, look at this, like investigate this, take this further, because there's something here. So he had this feeling that the two incidences were linked. And he obviously had the opportunity to go back through all of his cancer patients, and he discovered that in 100% of cases, so true for every case, there was a traumatic event that preceded the discovery and the showing up of their cancer. And more to that was actually the way that the nature of the event and the way that the person perceived the event would specifically determine where in the body that cancer showed up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's amazing. Like I know, like, even though, because truth comes out in our physical body, like I'm a believer of that. Like when you share that story about Dr. Harmon, I'm like head to toe goosebumps. Like, I was just like, wow. Like, and I just know for me, that's like that, like certainty that there's truth in that. And also really profound that he listened to his intuition and he followed that, because it's now been able to ripple out and make an impact on so many, hundreds of thousands of people's lives.
Massively. And it wasn't an easy journey for him either. There was, lots of beautiful challenges along the way.
Isn't that the case when we're trying to change a paradigm of thinking? People, first they'll keep on scorning it and ridiculing it until they part of the journey. Oh, you go.
And we thought it was just going to be cupcakes and rainbows and
exactly,
and changing the world.
So what was your convincer? Like, or did you have a convincer when it
Definitely. Yeah. So I started playing with it straight away in my own life, and saw lots of like interesting little shifts and results and that kind of thing. But there was one big, massive main one for me. And that was a very personal, quite intimate, heads up, this might be too much information for some, but here's the raw version. So when we moved into this house where we are now, shortly after we moved in here, I developed a really, really intense, gnarly case of thrush. And that lasted for about 2 years. But I was deeply into the self-study of German medicine by that stage. And I was like, I'm not going to take medicals for this. I'm going to figure this out. Like, I was so stubborn about it. And I had a fairly good idea what it was relating to. So I went through a sexual trauma when I was around 6. And I was fairly certain it related to that. So those 2 years took me on this massive self-exploration journey, and loads of layers shedding and healing and all the things that come with digging into that. And this is one of the things I love about German medicine as well, is like we're working with physical symptoms, but the personal growth and evolution journey that it takes us on is next level. And so, yeah, that was a process. It was 2 years. And then one day there was an event. I actually reached out to the mother of some of the people involved in that event, and I got absolute closure on that event. And it still elicits like a bit of a goosebumpy emotional response in me now. And literally when I got her response to that event, I felt my body it was like 15 kilos just went whoosh and dropped off. And it was just such a lightness. And I was like, oh, that's no longer a thing. Like, it's just not. It's not there anymore. And I didn't really make the connection at the time. But it was about 2 days later, and my partner sort of asked, how are you going with things? And I was like, oh, it's gone. I was like, it's gone. There is nothing. There's nothing. And I like women on the call, I don't know, women watching this, if you've had a really gnarly case of thrush, it can be pretty intense. And it literally went from like scale 10 to nothing overnight in that space of time. And I knew that was done. I knew that program was done. The thrush does relate to a sexual conflict. And yeah, it was just so done and has never, ever returned since, like not a speck of it. So that was definitely like my big, massive moment. Yep. And then there's been lots and lots of little ones since, especially working with pain and all sorts of things. But yeah, that was.
I have to say that I love the fact that it's also the healing you had is on a topic that most people feel uncomfortable talking about, because it's like, then if you can talk about that, they can talk about their whatever challenge they have that may be a little bit too challenging to share publicly.
And I have to say that this is actually one of the additional blessings that German New Medicine has brought to my life, because I no longer have or see any shame around symptoms whatsoever. Like, we haven't caught something, we're not dirty, we're not wrong, we're not broken. We have literally had an experience, and our body has responded to that experience in a way that it believes is helping us. So it's really taken, so much shame out of symptoms. It's helped me to relate to people a lot better in terms of their mental behaviors as well, because GNM covers the mental side of things as well, mental health challenges, a lot more compassion. And when I'm speaking with people now and I'm hearing symptoms, or someone's a bit like uncomfortable about sharing a symptom, I'm like, your body just responded to an event of this nature. It's nothing like you haven't done anything wrong, you're not broken. So that's been an additional blessing there for sure.
And I also have to say that I also love that, because part of the Demartini method is we work to certainty. If we're asking you what's the, you had something that you perceive to be traumatic and a challenge, and we ask what's the benefit, each of your answers have to have a level of certainty. And until you're certain that the event was, that was equal benefits and drawbacks, or it was such a blessing for what happened, that we look for certainty, because certainty is where the healing happens. It's like when a doctor comes to you and they go, maybe not in this one, but the doctor comes and says you're now healed, or the operation was like a really big success, and you have such trust in the doctor and their certainty that you feel healed. So we, instead of looking for the outside doctor to give us certainty, we look for the certainty within, and that's what you were sharing before. That certainty is actually the part of the healing process.
100%. It's our internal doctor, our internal compass. Totally.
Then what results have you seen then using German New Medicine? So besides your own, like what have you seen with clients that you've worked with?
So I love and have worked with a lot of pain clients, and that's one, it's, I guess, really satisfying. I'm a little piece of ego here, but it's really satisfying because the pain can be such a quick shift, it can be such a quick transition. So that's really, it's just so empowering to witness that and guide people through that and see them step into their empowerment. So pain is a big one, musculoskeletal, chronic pain. Some of the more dramatic ones that I've seen are a lady with a breast lump, about a 2 centimeter lump in her left breast. And that was gone literally 2 days after our first session together. She wrote in and was like, it's gone. And even I was a little bit, wow, for that one. Lots of women's health stuff. So thrush, UTIs, fertility, lots of big stuff in the fertility space as well. And mental health challenges is another ones that I love to work with. And it's just so beautiful to witness shifts in that. So people coming off of lifelong medications and just coming back to feeling balanced and feeling themselves again, and clear thought patterns. So many, again, like a plethora of skin conditions, another one. But probably some of the ones that I've worked with more frequently and see those really dramatic results.
It's such a career. Like you can wake up every day and make such a profound difference in people's lives. It's so rewarding.
Totally.
So maybe we can see if we can nut out an example together. Like, it'd be great to talk about a challenge someone's faced, and then how we would both approach it from your German New Medicine perspective and my Demartini method perspective.
So one of the easiest examples that I find of helping people understand this process is when it comes to the musculoskeletal system. And the musculoskeletal system through the GNM lens, or German New Medicine, I'll use GNM, it responds to what we call a self-devaluation conflict. So basically it's where somebody has an event, experiences an event that catches them off guard. And in that event, they perceive that in some way they were not enough. So all of the enoughs are like good enough, strong enough, fast enough, smart enough, all the enoughs, yeah, self-evaluation. And with the musculoskeletal program, what happens that when the person is in conflict active phase, there's 2 phases to every biological program, the muscle tissue breaks down, much akin to like someone going into the gym and having a heavy workout. During that workout, we're doing that workout to break down muscle tissue because we perceive that we're not good enough, we're not strong enough. So we're breaking down the muscle tissue, we're pushing heavy weights, because we know at the end of that process, when the muscle rebuilds, it's going to be stronger and better than before. Yeah. This is a very, very cool little analogy. And that's basically what happens in the body as well with the musculoskeletal system on an automatic program. So if we take this into terms of like an actual example, say we've got Mary, and Mary is an artist, and she develops chronic wrist pain. So we would look at Mary and we would look at her timeline, and we know that the wrist, especially for an artist, like if you think about what the wrist does, it's a main part of an artist's body, like the wrist and the hand. It's really, really common for artists to experience arthritis and chronic pain in this area. So we'd look at Mary, we'd look at her timeline experience. We want to look at when the pain first started. And say Mary's pain first started, she, just throwing out a random example, right? She did a massive commission for someone, delivered that art commission, and the client wasn't happy with that product. And so the client's gotten angry at her, it's really caught her off guard. She didn't expect it. The artwork's been sent back or something. And she's experienced a conflict. And in that moment, she's perceived that she was not good enough. Yeah. She didn't produce a good enough artwork. And so this wrist didn't do its job. So the body's going to start breaking down that musculoskeletal tissue because it perceived that it's not good enough. And then say somebody actually ends up buying that artwork, or somebody commissions her for something else, a bigger, better artwork. And so the area of the body is going to start going into a partial resolution. So it's going to start rebuilding the tissue, because now it's like, oh, actually, I am good enough, and I'm going to build this muscle stronger and better so that I can become better. So she might then experience pain and inflammation in the wrist. But what probably hasn't happened is that what we need to do is help her create. So even though there's a partial resolution here, like she's got a new artwork or it sold to someone else, and so she's made that kind of little step in the psyche, but the psyche needs to come to a point where it absolutely, with certainty, like you said, no longer perceives the original event as a problem. And so we would work with Mary to change the perception of that original event. And that's where, like, this is the kind of thing where I can see that German medicine and Demartini can work so beautifully together, because Demartini is already very close to like a lot of techniques that I use with my clients already. So like you said, we're looking at perception change. Yeah. So things like, I guess the kind of questions that I would ask are like, how did that event happen for you instead of to you? And getting the benefits of that event. Like, how did that event actually benefit you? How was it not a problem? How can we convince the psyche that it was not a problem? And this is where I've come to love what I know of the Demartini method so much, because what I've learned through you, Tanya, is that it's so structured. So where I was asking similar questions of my clients anyway, Demartini offers this beautiful structure that any individual who comes through and learns can start to integrate into their own lives and their own situations. So perhaps if you want to take us through that one a little bit from your perspective and from the Demartini lens, what you do there.
Okay, so if Mary came to me and she has a wrist injury, I would first of all say that, you know, we have 4 ecosystems that are helping us to get us back into equilibrium. So we have 2 internal and 2 external. So the 2 internal are our intuition, which is that little whispering that is saying, you know, go do something, and it's trying to balance ourselves out. And then we also have our physical body is another one that's also helping us to kind of to balance ourselves out. So the two external, if you're wanting to know, are the sociology, where your friends, family are telling you the downside if you're really elated about something, or you just have like, you know, a random car accident that kind of bumps you, what you perceive to be random, because it's like, you know, shit happens, you know, to kind of get you back into balance. So when it comes to so an injury, for example, we would call that a jury from within. So it's like there's some kind of challenge that you've gone through on the outside, and then and you don't know how to kind of, I guess, process it in some kind of way. So your body ends up like showing you how you're feeling and thinking on the inside. So similar to what you say, I'm not good enough or whatever it is because the artwork wasn't commissioned. And so essentially we do the same thing. We go back and we ask the individual if they've had an injury, like when was the first time you ever experienced the pain? Because pain doesn't come on it's not pain's not random. It's a feedback. If pain's your friend, it's trying to feedback to let you know that there's something going on for you. So we would go back and explore what happened at that particular time. Let's say it's the commission, and she got, you know, she got yelled at. Now at that time, she could have gone, whoa, 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 and with her, you know, hands, and that's where it started to get the pain, because she's like trying to push him, you know, or push the individual or whatever, like not physically, but just like, whoa, that's a bit much. And then she starts to feel the pain there. So it depends on also which way that she can flex to also what's going on inside of the psychology as well. Then we would also ask, because our perceptions are creating the pain, or our perceptions of pain, do something similar. Like we would find the blessings out of it, because every event that ever happened, you know, in psychology, for example, they have, and it's you experience the stress afterwards, but then they also have post-traumatic growth. And so we can wait the time to allow the learning and the growth to happen. And it's like, oh, I'm so grateful for my life because it's made me who I am today. Well, that's like stock standard, but it's like, let's go back. And if you had to do everything all over again, would that be okay? Most be like, no, hell no. And it's like, we want to go back into the moment. We want to go actually into the moment of perception when that individual said, your artwork is, you know, terrible, horrible, whatever it was, it's shit, it's not good enough. What's the benefit to you? And you have to ask it so many times over and over again to rewire the brain, which is what you call psyche, to shift your perception. And as you balance your perception, see, instead of it seeing all bad, no good, you see it as equal benefit and drawback, equal good and bad, that's when your physiology starts to relax and you're like, you know what, that's actually perfect for what I wanted.
Yeah.
We also look at it from also another perspective as well, is because sometimes we can have fantasies on what we expect our outer world to be like. My body should always function for me. I deliver a project out to the world and they should love it. And so we put these like shoulds and expectations on the world. And then anytime it doesn't deliver, we can get upset. And so we also want to be able to crack the fantasies we have about our body and our life and our experiences to also help with our physiology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about here is like so spot on with, like I said, just helping the psyche understand that there's no problem anymore. And then it basically turns off the biological program in the body. And the tie-in, I think, that I love and that I can see there's a lot of room for in the collaboration between Demartini and German New Medicine is that German New Medicine gives that roadmap. It gives the themes that we can base some of our questioning around. Like I could see you having, not that you don't already, but having some really powerful sessions by just taking like some of the themes associated from a German medicine perspective with what we know that pain to be connected to, and just weaving that into the Demartini questioning. And then, we bring the psyche to a place where it's like, I don't need to assist the individual anymore. I can turn this program off. We
come from a perspective as well. When we go, we would say, if you had to say, no, I don't like your work, they would say, yes, I want the exact same thing to happen over again. And that's when we know, we would call like the psyche closing the loop, or, complete that. We would say that moment of perception is cleared, and that it's no longer an emotional charge. It doesn't, you don't have to think about it anymore. It's not running your physiology. It's not running your mind anymore, because you found the hidden order in it.
Yeah, so amazing. And the one other little piece that I'll just weave in here is what I found is in those moments that people tend to make those moments mean so much about themselves. And that's a really poignant piece as well, is when we can help people understand that nothing actually means anything unless we choose it to be that way. That's really, really powerful as well. And again, just ties in with both Demartini and German New Medicine so beautifully. That, yeah, when we can neutralize any meaning of the event, and then again, it's not a problem.
Yeah. Which is why, for example, if you've got siblings, you grew up in the same household and you have very different perceptions of your parents. And it's like, well, we had the same experience. I don't know why it's so different. And so that's because we're all just wired, we're wired differently to perceive different things. And so we'll come in with our own stuff, but as long as we can find the order in it, it changes our whole experience.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. Hey, look, we were going to jump into mental health programs here as well, but I'm almost feeling like we're like coming up an hour on this amazing chat right now.
We're going to have, and maybe we can totally part two.
Maybe do a part 2 and we delve into the mental health challenges, because I feel like it does actually have its whole own conversation around it, again, between the tie-in between the two sets of laws and principles. So yeah, maybe we'll leave that little breadcrumb trailer for all our viewers. Leave them excited for part 2. And yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share as a wrap up in Demartini and German New Medicine?
Well, I just think for me, if it feels like it's resonant and it feels like, there's a part of your intuition that says, you know what, there's some of this that makes sense, or you just have a knowing, I would highly recommend just, I run group coaching classes on helping you to apply the Demartini method on your own personal life. So if you're interested in coming along, then it gives you an opportunity to come and master your own life and master, a series of questions that can be profound to change, your finances, to your health and well-being, to your intimate relationships. It just has a ripple effect on so many different areas of life.
Yeah. Totally. And I can absolutely personally vouch for that as well. Definitely personally vouch for both Tanya's one-on-one sessions and work, and also the maximum growth calls were fantastic. I haven't been on for a little while, but I will be back there again one day.
Making a baby, and then
making babies
and growing babies. So,
I highly, highly recommend those calls. They're a really, really great value offering, I think, getting so much of your wisdom and going through the processes in that monthly format, and the consistency of it, I think, is a massive piece as well.
Yes. You also have your course.
Yeah. So I'm now teaching German New Medicine as well. So I have a course for the everyday person to kind of learn and sink their teeth into German New Medicine. That leads into a practitioner integration course as well. If you want to start integrating German New Medicine into your work as a holistic health practitioner or something in that field. So yeah, that's kind of my main offering relevant to our conversation today. And of course, I also work one-on-one if people are feeling called to explore this avenue and way of facilitating their own healing of both physical and mental health symptoms. It is my absolute pleasure to guide that process. So yeah, reach out to Tanya or I, maybe both. Maybe you can reach out to both of us and do the both. Or just whatever resonates, basically. We'd love to hear from you guys if we can help in any way. And I hope even this conversation has just been of massive value to you all today. Thank you to whoever comes along and joins us for the ride.
And thank you, Nellie, for hanging out for an hour and sharing some wisdom together.
My absolute pleasure to be here with you, Tanya. Thank you.